All right, so we got pretty fancy here. But we're nothing if not fancy. And I'd like to be even fancier. I've been promising that we would learn about objects. Let's learn about objects. I'm going to open up our friend CodePen, because this isn't part of the project. Just want to fiddle around with some code real quick. How do we create a JavaScript object? What is an object? What's that look like? Strings we put inside quotes, right? Or now we know we could also use backticks. To create a number, you just write the number. To create an array, how do we do it? Const veggies equals, yeah, square brackets. What's your favorite veggie, Dana? Fancy. Maybe that's how you spell it? What's your favorite veggie, Dimple? Broccoli. We like our double C's. Cool. That's an array. So what's an object? How's that look? Curly braces. Const foods. Curly braces. So what do we have? It's not just a list of items like that. It's a list of keys and values, basically. So each thing in the object has a label associated with it, right? Some sort of string that identifies it. For example, we could have veggies, colon, and then the value, what could the value be? It could be a string. Could it be an array? Sure, why not? Put an array in here. Seems legit. Or it could just be a string. I screwed something up. Do you see what I screwed up? Didn't put a comma. Let's see what would happen. I've got a little red rascal here. What's it say? Unexpected identifier. Our least favorite error message because it's so profoundly unhelpful. It very often means something like you forgot a character. You forgot a comma. You forgot a parenthesis. Unexpected identifier. In this case, the syntax highlighting also helps us because this is yellow, but these are purple. Yep, I forgot a comma right here. You know what's a cool way to make sure you don't forget commas? Put them there every dang time. What if I put it there? There's nothing after it. Totally allowed. You can put a stray comma at the end of an object like that, or an array. You can do it here too. Totally legal, but especially with an object, I like to do this because then if I go back and add another one, I don't have to remember to put the comma on the line before. You'd be shocked how many errors you save yourselves by doing this. So I always like to put the comma at the end there. You can't put the comma at the end of an argument list. That'll blow something up. But putting it at the end of a list of key value pairs inside an object literal totally works. So now what can we do with this thing? I want to console log the string pancakes. How do I get it out of there? Well, so how do I get broccoli out of that array? Veggies, what? I want to get broccoli out of there. Yeah, Nathan. It would be 1. It is 0 indexed, but what do I type first? Bracket. So 0 would be zucchini. Let's console log that. Get our console visible. Zucchini. Console log veggies index 1 would be broccoli. Right? So how would I get pancakes out of foods? How can I log that? Foods dot breakfast. Pancakes. Indeed. Heck, what if I wanted to get broccoli out of there? I wanted to get broccoli out of foods. What's foods dot veggies? That's the, whoa, shucks. What just happened? It just blew away my dang thing, didn't it? Oh no, what on earth? Whatever, it's here. All is not lost. So, if I console log food.veggies, I get the entire array. So how could I get broccoli? How could I change this line to get broccoli out of there? I could put index 1 after that, right? Since we know foods.veggies returns the whole array, I could get broccoli by just sticking square bracket 1 there. There's another way besides food.veggies. How else could I do that? You know? There's another syntax to do exactly the same thing. To get an item out of an object if you already know the key. Anybody know the other syntax for it? Tucker? Good guess. That works with certain objects in HTML, in the DOM, but not necessarily a generic object. That's right. Food.elements, is that a thing? Undefined. But that would be cool. But there's something that does something very much like that. But what else could we do besides dot veggies? Square brackets, the string veggies, like that. So the keys in an object are strings. This is really this. It's kind of like an array that's indexed by string. It's called an associative array in some languages like PHP. Or like a hash in Ruby or a map in Python. It is like a dictionary. That's what I meant. Yes, dictionary, not a map. Yeah, basically the same thing. So the keys are really strings. But there's a rule that if you name your keys the same way you would name a variable, by not putting any spaces or beginning them with a number or putting dashes and things like that in there, you can leave the quotes out. And that's part of the reason we camel case things, because as long as we're camel casing, then you can always do this. But they're still really strings. So no matter what the keys are, you can always get the value out by using square brackets. But again, if you follow those naming rules, you can use a dot. If I made the key something like this, totally legal. But I can no longer use the dot. I have to say square bracket. And then it works. But I obviously can't say foods dot my favorite veggies like that. Right? As soon as it sees that space, it's moved on. Make sense? So when else might you need the square brackets? What if I didn't know that key was breakfast. But I knew that I had the key in a variable like this. Const key equals breakfast. And I want to get that out of there. If I say foods.key, it's going to look for an actual key called key, right? It's going to look for the string key. But key is a variable that contains the string I actually want. So how would I do that? Yeah, you can put foods, square bracket, key. Then I get pancakes. Because remember, we're really just putting a string in here. And a string could be a string literal that we use with quotes, or it could be a variable that holds a key, that holds a string. Totally works. What if I want to log all of them, and I don't know what any of them are called? So the suggestion earlier that it would be cool if we could say foods.elements and just loop over them. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, but there's a similar way to achieve the same thing. You may have had to use this actually in your Code Wars stuff. If you actually got the, I think it's called mirror object, that one. If you got that one to work, you may have had to use this trick. How do I get all of the items in an object if I don't know what the keys are? There's more than one way to do it. But what if here's what I want. I really want to get an array with all of the keys. I want an array that says veggies, fruits, and breakfast. Because I don't know what the keys are. I want to get this array. Anyone know how to get this array out of this? Ooh, stringify. That's pretty fancy. That would be JSON.stringify, right? Yeah. JSON.stringify. You don't need to write this down. This is not how we're going to do it. We will totally use this in a day or two, though. JSON stringify foods. Let's console log that. And we get kind of the whole darn thing. Yeah. Join? But how do we even get them into an array? Array from? Array dot from, like from foods? Let's see about array from food. Let's console log that. See if that gives us anything. Let's try this again. Let's make sure we're seeing what we're seeing. I'll just make a change and then backspace over it so it'll run again. I'm not seeing anything. Array of foods, that would help, wouldn't it? It gives me an empty array. Array from is really cool. We're also going to use it in a day or two. It doesn't work on an object, though. Yeah. Is it object.keys? I'm not sure all of you did your prerequisites. Object.keys. Let's say object.keys foods. What does that give us? Well, I need to log it, right? Console.log. Yeah, it gives us that array containing just the keys. So once we have that, if we wanted to get all the values, let's do this. Let's say const keys equals, not console.log anymore. Let's store the result of object.keys. So object.keys is a built-in function in JavaScript that gives us exactly that, an array of all of the keys in an object, whatever they may be. Gives it to us as an array. So now, suppose I wanted to get the string pancakes out of here. And I don't know that it's pancakes. I just want whatever is in this position inside that object. How would I do it now that I've got this array? Food square bracket what? Keys square bracket 2. Console.log that. Zero, 1, 2. Foods. Dang it, not food. Pancakes. Yeah. How do we get bananas? Oh, man. Well, how do we get this array? How do we get the array that we have stored at fruits? Because that's the value here, right? How do we get that? Instead of keys square bracket 2, that would be key square bracket 1, right? That would give us that whole array. Apples, bananas. Oh, we've got an array nested inside an object. So the syntax is going to be, yeah, basically that. So now we've got apples and bananas. So it seems we could tack on square bracket 1 there, right? Now that's ghastly looking. That's a ghastly line of code. So if we wanted to do something like that, we should probably break it down into more than one line, like const fruits equals foods square bracket keys square bracket 1, which is still pretty gross, and then say fruits square bracket 1. That's how I would do that, and that gives us our string. So suppose we've got our keys now in this variable object.keys. How can I get all of them? How can I loop over this thing and log each one? For each. Oh man, how does that work? Let's look it up. Developer.mozilla.org. Our best friend. Let's search the docs for each. Here we go. Array prototype for each. It's camel cased. Here's a little example. Looks like on an array you can call dot for each and pass in a function. Oh man, this is getting complicated. How does it work? The parameters to for each. The parameter is a callback, which really just means a function being passed as an argument. And then that function you pass is going to get arguments, the first of which is the current value, the value of the element being processed in the array. And it looks like all the other arguments are optional, and frankly, my brain's getting full already. So let's try this out. Yeah, question? Did you have a question? No, I thought you did something with your hand. Okay, so we've got an array called keys. To loop over the array of keys, we could say keys dot for each. And it looks like for each expects a function. Now we've learned that we could write the function somewhere else, or we could just make it up right here anonymously, right? And in this case, this is probably not a function we're going to reuse, so maybe that's the thing to do. And remember when we had a function that was an event handler, there was an argument getting passed in there whether we asked for it or not, right? That event. Similarly, according to the documentation, our function that we pass in here is always going to get this argument current value, whether we put it there or not. And remember, current value is just what they're calling it. It's always going to get passed in regardless of what we name it in our argument list. So we can name it something else. So we can name it, we don't need to name it current value. We can just name it value, something like that. And then what's going to happen is it will run this function as many times as there are items in that array. let's comment this out for a moment and demonstrate. Let's have a very simple array. Const dinos equals T-Rex Triceratops Stegosaurus. And let's see if we can just spit all of those out. So dinos dot for each it's going to get we need to pass in a function. That function is going to receive each value from the array. In this case, we know each value is a dinosaur, so I could just call that dino for my own sake as I read this so I understand what this function is actually doing. So here's my function. And I'm just going to say console log dino. And look at that. It spit out T-Rex, Triceratops, Stegosaurus. Totally worked. If I wanted to say console.log my favorite dinosaur is the whatever dino is. I use my backticks here. And then I get my favorite dinosaur is the T-Rex. My favorite dinosaur is the Triceratops. My favorite dinosaur is the Stegosaurus. Make sense? I'll move this example to the top here. Let me save this thing. Arrays and objects. Session 1 morning. Here's a link to this. I'll put it in Slack. You can actually follow along if you want. Come on, Slack. You can do it. I believe in you. I will put it in Slack eventually. So now we have a different array that we know contains the list of keys from this object. So veggies, fruits, and breakfast. So what if we put basically that same function here? Function value, and we just say console.log value. Oops, not the string value. What's it going to say? Veggies, fruits, and breakfast. But we don't want the keys. There it is. We want the values. We want the array of veggies, the array of fruits, and the string pancakes. How can we do that here? We've got the array of keys. One by one, we're iterating through that array and getting an individual key. I'll call it key. What could I do? So foods is our original object, right? And we know that we can get to the individual items in there using either a dot or a square bracket. Now, since we don't actually know what those strings are, but we have those strings stored in a variable, the variable key each time through, we could say foods square bracket key. And it'll run that for every single one of them. So we get zucchini, broccoli, apples, bananas, and pancakes. To demonstrate again, I could say heck, how about this? We could print the actual key and then a colon and then the value. And we get veggies, zucchini, broccoli, fruits, apples, bananas, breakfast, pancakes. By the way, notice what's happening here. Foods square bracket veggies actually returns an array, right? But since we're using string interpolation on that array, zucchini broccoli here with a comma in between them must be what you get when you call toString on an array. Make sense? And we did this with an anonymous function. It could have been a function that we wrote and named. Let's do that with the dinosaur version. Const dinos. I'll comment all this out for a moment. What if I actually bothered to write that function? Function print dinos. And we know the function is going to get passed an argument that is an individual dinosaur. And what we want to do is console log this. And then inside for each and saying, instead of writing the anonymous function right there, what if I just put print dinos? Not print dinos, open close parens, because then we'd be passing into for each the return value of print dinos, which is undefined. For each actually expects the function itself. And there we go. My favorite dinosaur is the T-Rex, the Triceratops, the Stegosaurus. Yeah, what happened if we put the parentheses there? My favorite dinosaur is the undefined. Because what happens is, it runs it right here. It doesn't run it 3 times. It doesn't run it once for each. It just runs it right there on line 5. And we passed in nothing, so we got undefined here. For each expects the actual function. So we could do it this way. Very often with something like for each, we want to use an anonymous function. It's just a little easier to keep track. I'll leave it like this to demonstrate that you can do it. There's another function that's very similar to for each, but it actually returns you an array at the end. Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's going to become one of our favorites. Map. So we'll talk about map after a quick break. We're halfway through the morning, so let's go ahead and take a break. Come back in 10 minutes, refreshed, ready to go. And this code pin is now in Slack, by the way.